Hello again. In John Wesley Brady's This Freedom Whence, discussing the birth of the Labour Party in Britain and the link it had to the evangelical community in the 19th and early 20th centuries, he goes on, if Hardy and MacDonald were the central figures in making the Labour Party an independent force, the Labour leaders who have left the next deepest impress are Arthur Henderson and George Lansbury. The former, a lifelong local preacher, the latter, a zealous Christian crusader, combining in his own person many of the most attractive aspects both of the evangelical and the Anglo-Catholic approach. Born of humblest parentage in 1863, Henderson as a boy served apprenticeship as a moulder in Newcastle. Soon, practical Christianity and constructive trade unionism became his consuming interests. His education was self-acquired. His driving motive was the application of Christian principles to civic, national, and international problems. While not very young, he rendered excellent while yet very young, he rendered excellent service on the Newcastle City Council. In 1903, he became Mayor of Darlington, and the same year won a seat in Parliament. From 1908 to 1910, he was chairman of the National Labour Party, a post to which he again was elected in 1914. In the coalition war ministries, both under Asquith and Lord George, he held cabinet stations. In the Labour government of 1924, he was Home Secretary, and in that of 1929, Foreign Secretary. Always a man of peace, his labours after the war centred in that field, and he was chosen president of the Disarmament Conference held at Geneva in 1932. Lansbury, born in 1859, did not enter Parliament till he was 51. His training, like that of Henderson, was through municipal experience. Till 1892 he had been a Liberal. Then, converted to socialism, he became a flaming apostle of Labour doctrines. Long contact with municipal affairs enabled him, in 1909, to render signal service as a member of the Royal Commission on the Poor Law. In 1910 he was elected MP for Bow, East London, and 2 years later resigned his seat to vindicate his advocacy of women's suffrage. In 1912 he began editing the Daily Herald, thus giving Labour its first daily paper. In 1919-20 he was mayor of the London borough of Poplar, and in 1921 his policy of generous relief to the unemployed won him a short term of imprisonment. In 1924 he refused office in the first Labour government. From 1925 to 1927 he published Lansbury's Labour Weekly, and from 1927 to 28 was chairman of the National Labour Party. First Commissioner of Works in the second Labour government, that is from 1929 to 1931, he vastly improved and expanded the parks and playing fields of the land, adapting them especially to the needs of children. Finally, he rose to be opposition leader in the House of Commons, but for conscience sake relinquished that office. The Christian World expressed but sober truth when it stated that if often he was politically wrong, everyone feels that all Lansbury's actions and decisions are inspired by an unselfish and high-minded motive. Such men, whatever their party allegiance, are the glory of our public life. Lansbury's career was crowned by an action which, in a sense, ended it. He resigned the leadership of his party because, as a pacifist, he could no longer guide a body committed to preparation for war. These Labour giants stand not as isolated individuals, despite all the efforts of Marxian atheists and ideological rationalists to capture the British Labour movement. Christian influences have remained its saving salt. The historical backgrounds of the Labour movement have made it wary of doctrinaire dogmatists and cure-all adventurers. Continental organs often have dubbed the Labour Party the Salvation Army of British politics. But the working masses have only rejoiced in the jibe. The very name of Labour's chief educational centre, Ruskin College at Oxford, is indicative of the social evangelical forces when the names that have inspired the Labour crusade. Moreover, when the names of such characters as Will Crooks, Philip Snowden, Margaret Bonfield, James Hudson, Jack Lawson, Professor Lee Smith and A.V. Alexander are placed alongside those of Burt, Fenwick, Arch, Hardy, MacDonald, Henderson, and Lansbury, it will be seen how deep are the ethical religious springs at which this social-political movement has fed. Nor dare one suggest that the same spiritual influences have been absent from the Conservative and Liberal parties. Both have passed measures of signal humanitarian value, both through the days of Wilberforce, Buxton, and Shaftesbury to those of Gladstone, Lloyd George, and Churchill, can point to many characters whose disinterested championship of high causes would have enriched the public life of any state. The purging baptism of fire affected not only the personal, educational, and social life of the British people, but also its political and national life, and the same baptism was mightily at work both in America and throughout the self-governing British dominions overseas. This is written, of course, in the late 1930s on the brink of the Second World War. Churchill has not yet become Prime Minister. I put in a link to a video Vivian did from an article by Victor Shepard on the impact of Francis of Assisi on medieval life. See you soon.